In this episode, Golden and I discuss The Flash, Season 7. Full speed ahead.
The Omega Beam. Full power. The Omega Beam.
Welcome to the Omega Beam number 134. I'm your host, Oren Merton. So even though the CW superhero show Arrow is now over, the CW Arrowverse and all of its related and interlinked superhero shows still continues. So now all 18 episodes of The Flash Season 7 are streaming on the CW site in the USA and I believe on Netflix everywhere else. And I think they stream on Netflix as well in the US. There's just a little bit of a delay between when it finally airs on the CW network and when Netflix gets to show it. So with Season 7 in its entirety available, that means it's time for us to weigh in on it. So this isn't heavy on spoilers, but we do go into more detail than you're going to get in the trailer. So be forewarned. And let's get into it.
Good day to you. And this is Golden, and I'm here with Oren to talk about The Flash, Season 7.
It's been around a while, hasn't it?
It has.
So what did you think?
I think we both were kind of iffy on the last season.
Yeah.
But
agreed.
I feel like they're picking it up and finding their heart again.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I would say also, this season had a lot of heavy lifting to do. First of all, Season 6 didn't actually end the way it was supposed to. That arc never wrapped up because production was closed because of COVID. So this season had to, first of all, wrap up Season 6. And then, in addition to that, two of the main characters who have been there from day one, Tom Cavanagh, who has played Harrison Wells in all kinds of multiversal ways, as well as Eobard Thawne, and Carlos Valdez, who had played Cisco Ramon since the beginning and is in many ways one of the key members of Team Flash. Both of them were leaving this season, so it had to wrap up Season 6. It had to give those two beloved
But
and central...
how can you have a season or a Flash without Tom Cavanagh?
I know, we're going to have to figure it out. But they had to give them the kind of send-offs that they deserved as, regulars who are beloved and are not leaving out of any kind of scandal, but simply because it's been enough years. So for those of you who didn't know and were maybe wondering, why did the elongated man never show up again from this season on? He was caught in quite a scandal. Well, the actor who played the elongated man, he really did stick his foot in it pretty spectacularly. And so everyone was completely shocked, and the CW and Berlanti basically said, "Yeah, we can't have you on our show anymore."
And I should say that it was after the Ava storyline had passed that I felt like it was getting back its heart.
I agree,
because the mirror universe,
right? That was its own thing.
I think it kind of dragged on, and it's like one of those hallways where you're looking in one mirror and you're seeing all of the others. Yeah. And it just didn't want to end. Yeah.
I agree completely. And I've often said, just as a general rule, that I understand that American broadcast television, where they make their money by selling ads, they tend to have seasons that go for 20, 22, 24, sometimes 26 episodes. But that's okay in the days of episodic television, where each episode is its own done in one story. But when you're doing serialized storytelling, that's a lot of episodes that you have to fill for one single arc. And they tried in the Arrowverse shows, in these superhero shows on the CW, they have tried to get around that by having, instead of one arc per season, 2 arcs per season. So that cuts it down, and I think that's helped. But I do think that artistically, a lot of these shows would benefit from less shows.
I mean, you had some fun episodes, like the one with the 90s.
Yes.
Where they ended up in a time loop.
Uh-huh.
That's a lot of fun. Killer Frost.
Mm-hmm.
Killer Frost walks into a bar.
That is a fun episode.
Sees hot stuff behind the bar. And then isn't really sure how to act.
Yeah.
So and then it doesn't actually stop there. You get to kind of explore that a little bit more in the later season.
Exactly. Yeah. I think one of the hardest
later part of the season. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think one of the things that's harder to do as a show moves on is to keep it fresh, because you fall in love with a show because you love the core team, but if they never switch up the dynamics in the core team, it's never going to grow. It's never going to get interesting. It's going to start retreading and people are going to lose interest. And that's not easy to do. I've been very open that I missed a fair number of seasons of Arrow because midway in their run, I felt they just sort of broke up the team just to do it because they felt they needed, to bring in different dynamics and whatever. And I never liked it after that.
It's amazing how one of the Arrow characters gets around.
That's right. Well, part of it, I think, is one of the things the CW is really good at is
sharing their actors and actresses.
Sharing their actors and actresses. And also, I believe it was Katie Lotz from Legends of Tomorrow who was talking about the sort of director school that they have, that Berlanti runs basically a director school. And if you want to direct, then they will train you. They will make you shadow a director. They will have you go through the entire process, editing room, the whole thing from soup to nuts. And then eventually you can start to direct. So one of the things that they have done is, the actor you're talking about, David Ramses, who plays Diggle, he's directed a bunch of these episodes. He's directed, I think, Superman and Lois. He's directed The Flash. And so once you're already directing, why not give yourself a little role? Or if you're going to hire him as a director, why not hire him for the one in which he has a little role? So I think that's great. I think it's great, like you said, that they share actors. They're really good at that. And I think it's great they're letting their talent direct, because a lot of people, I think, end up loving directing. I mean, obviously, the classic example in this genre that we do has to be Jonathan Frakes, who after Star Trek The Next Generation started directing in those days, in those shows, and now has become just a really in-demand television director, like a very, very, not just successful, but respected television director.
Well, see, not talking about directors, but another one which I liked was Ines Esmar, who was Psych, who came over. I mean, Blind Spot is done.
Right.
So, but I enjoyed him on Blind Spot as Rich.com, and it was fun to see him in another role. And the whole little Psych storyline was kind of interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I don't think that this entire season was a hit it out of the ballpark, but I felt like it was a lot of good innings.
I agree, and I think one of the reasons that it was, like you said, not necessarily a lot of home runs, but some really good hits, was that they did have 2 arcs, which I agree with you, they began after they wrapped up season 6. And then they had 2 arcs. And first it was the Speed Force is split up and is kind of evil, and they need to figure out how they're going to, number 1, get Barry his speed, and number 2, get it without the Speed Force and all its little splinters.
And it's not just the Speed Force. It's the Still Force.
Right. Those are the splinters, absolutely.
I mean, there's lots of different, what is it, Time Force?
Yeah, there's the Still Force, the Time Force, the Psych Force. I think there was
a Strength Force?
Strength Force, exactly. That was it. That was the Hispanic woman who was incredibly powerful, turned into basically the She-Hulk. And I think that they did that was okay. that was maybe not a lot of my favorite arc, but it was different and it was new and it didn't break. It gave a new dynamic to Team Flash, having to break up the core team, which I thought was well done. And then after they resolved that one, then it became Godspeed and the Godspeed Civil War. And I thought, once again, not every episode was amazing, but all of them were very good. And the arc sort of made sense within the context of the world. And it gave the characters, and now the new Speed Forces we'd been introduced to in Arc 1, it gave them a part in this one. So I felt it was well integrated, it was well written, and of course with any television show, if you love the characters is paramount. And I think that these characters are very good. Even when they introduced a new character, Chester, I thought he was a good character. So, all in all, I think that even though the show is changing, I like the changes. And like you said, it found its heart. And ultimately, The Flash is about heart. It's about heart. It's about love. It's about family. They really hit. They if anything, lay it on a little too thick. Sometimes they want to make sure you get the moral of the story. But I think it is entertaining. But it also, has a worthwhile thing that makes it, I think, pretty good. I suppose it's a little late now that we're, some 10 minutes into the conversation, but, oh yeah, spoilers.
I've been pretty good about not doing too much direct spoil.
We haven't, given the game away, but at the same time, I kind of feel like if you're listening to Season 7, it's not because you don't know about the show and you're trying to figure out, hey, what does the Omega Beam think about it? Do they like the show? Is it worth watching? I mean, I'm guessing that after it's been on over 7 years, you've kind of come up to your own conclusions and you're listening because you are a fan or because maybe you had questions about the season and you're hoping we'll talk about it and we might answer them for you.
So I'm looking on IMDb and I've been looking for a few minutes now to find the Strength Force actress. Mm-hmm. Who isn't even on the list of cast. So I'm very curious why Sarah Garcia is being not shown as part of the cast for the several episodes that she's in.
Is her human character in the cast? Because it's possible that the actual Strength Force was entirely CG.
I am looking at the cast, and I've looked at a couple episodes, and for some reason they have completely omitted Sarah Garcia. I mean, I can go to her page, and It says that she's Alexa in The Flash, but if I even click on that, and I go to that, and I go look at the cast, and I look for her, I'm just not seeing her anywhere. And considering that she was a pretty, Stephen Amell's coming up before her. And,
Well, by the way,
I'm very curious, IMDb, why Sarah Garcia is not even listed in the episodes that she is a major player in.
Well, I can tell you, since I am looking at Wikipedia, she is listed as a recurring character in Wikipedia. And it has a link to her page. It says Sarah Garcia as Alexa Rivera Fuerza. So her part and her character is listed in Wikipedia, and I don't know why she's not in IMDb.
She's definitely in Central City Strong, because that is an episode that she is a main player in.
Right, she is the adventure that episode.
So it's very interesting.
Yeah. I don't know the inner workings of these things, why she'd be in Wikipedia and not in IMDb when she's clearly a major actress in a few episodes. That's why she's listed as recurring on Wikipedia. They have 3 categories: main, recurring, and guest. And she is in recurring because her character was recurring. Imagine that. So I would say if you like The Flash, the show, and maybe like us, you didn't like certain seasons as much as others, Season 7 is back to form. It's one of the good ones, and you will like it.
Just make it through the first couple episodes.
Yeah, just remember the first couple episodes are sort of the wrap-up for Season 6 that they didn't get to do because of the pandemic, and they just kind of had to throw them in there because you can't just leave Season 6 hanging. So they just wrapped it up in a nice neat bow in basically an episode and a half or whatever, and then they get to the good stuff. And if you're not watching The Flash, I don't think I would recommend you start with season 7. I really think seasons 1 and 2 are some of the best superhero television they made. So I would highly recommend you start at the beginning, learn who the team is, and then if you want to skip maybe, 5 and 6, some of the mid-seasons or what. Although with season 5, I would highly recommend that you watch Crisis on Infinite Earths, the crossover between all the shows, because that's really good.
And that plays into Superman and Lois and several other shows as well.
Yeah. So even if you skip season 5, and it wasn't terrible, but you may not, it's not the best, watch Crisis on Infinite Earths, because that is literally the Berlanti-verse taking its victory lap. That they had made so many good shows, they were just like, you know what? Let's throw everybody in the soup, and let's take a classic DC Comics.
Was their end game?
Yeah, it was. It was their end game. The movies were faltering, so Berlanti, held it up with a fantastic, amazing crossover. But yeah, the 5th season, you can just catch the crossover if you want to, and season 6. If you're just a completist like I am, then, I bought them all and on iTunes. I watched them all. But it's maybe not the most necessary. But season 7 is back to form, and you will enjoy it. If you haven't watched it, watch the beginning seasons. Maybe skip a few that aren't so great. But season 7 is really good. And that gives me hope for season 8. That gives me hope that the next season is actually going to be a good one. And that's not easy to do. I mean, generally shows tend to, once they hit the point at which they start going downhill, it's kind of time, I think, to reevaluate. But no, The Flash is doing well at season 7.
It'll be interesting what season 8 brings.
Yeah, it will be. Well, thank you, Golden.
Thank you, Oren.
And that's it for this episode. You can find the show notes at theomegabeam.com/134. If you liked this episode, please leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Your reviews help people who like this stuff find our podcast. If you have any comments or suggestions, please drop us a line at info@theomegabeam.com. Be good to yourselves and each other, and we'll catch you next time.
The Omega Beam. Full stop.